All right, Jules, let's break this down further. In terms of Arne Slot. Now, for those who don't know, if we want to create, I'm sure there's lots of people writing profiles of Arne Slot and what he's going to bring to Liverpool. Obviously, he was a player. Really got on the radar, I think, at Feyenoord, where they lost the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, the last 3 years there was
to Roma.
Yeah,
famously. Put it this way: he's not Jose Mourinho's favorite guy. They really do not like each other.
No, I mean they're so extreme. Like they're two extremes, aren't they?
But just to give a sense of how outspoken he is, I think it was after they played each other in the Europa League, where he said something like, "Oh, I mean, I am paraphrasing here, so sorry, Arne, if I get this wrong." But it was something like, "I don't enjoy the way his teams play."
Yeah,
so
something
obviously,
like that.
Mourinho and the Rome media, how dare he say this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, what has he done in his career?
He was certainly winding him up, and there was a lot of, he's not afraid to do that, and I think people will like that. On the pitch, obviously, they won the double last season, and I think that was a big part of the reason, actually, why he stayed. I don't think he bottled the Spurs job. I think he looked at it and said, all right, Tottenham, rebuild mode, no Harry Kane. What are the odds of finishing top 4? He couldn't have imagined that Chelsea and United could have been as terrible as they have been, right? He's like, why don't you stay here at Feyenoord? And why don't we have a run? And I think the club gave him assurances that they'd hang on to their players. Most of them, they hung on to. The one guy who left was the guy with the Turkish name.
Yeah, Korkut, who went to Benfica.
Yeah, who went to Benfica.
Also, there was Champions League. I think he wanted to play in the Champions League, to coach in the Champions League. So it was a great experience for them.
And obviously, he got a new contract and whatever else. So I got no problem with that. His football, we've talked about, is very attacking oriented, but maybe even more so than Klopp's in terms of the
but
not so much the press, but
Eredivisie, though.
Well, they played that way in the Champions League a lot too.
Yeah, but
and in Europe, with the runners from the midfield as well as the front men.
Yeah, I just think I don't think you could do that in the Premier League that much. So I think this is clearly the philosophy and the style, and it's great and it's very entertaining to watch. But I would expect him to just tweak it a little bit for the Premier League. I think they played like that in the Champions League this season because this is what they were doing and that was what those players were used to. I think at Liverpool, I just would not be surprised if he just tweaked it a little bit. So he'd be very attacking, he'd be very intense, he'd be with a lot of pressing and counter-pressing, with a lot of running and movement, all of that. But I would expect him to maybe not be as bold as what he did in the Eredivisie. I think a league that is better for you to do it when you've got players like you have at Feyenoord than the Premier League with Liverpool.
Yeah. But actually, do we think the gap between, because I always find this an interesting question, right? With sort of, if you decide to play attacking football in the Eredivisie, obviously Feyenoord have better players, but is than most of the rest of the league. But is the gap between Feyenoord's squad and say middle of the table in the Eredivisie in terms of individual ability, is it greater than the gap between Liverpool's players and the middle of the table in the Premier League?
It's a good question. I still think that overall, the league being so strong, much stronger in the Premier League than in the Eredivisie, I just don't think if you go away, you can't really risk it. I think there's that. I think Feyenoord this season or last season going to the league Eredivisie away from home, thinking like, okay, 80% chances that we're going to win this or certainly not lose. In the Premier League, even when you go away to a team that is in the bottom 3, you don't have any guarantees like that.
Should Liverpool fans be concerned that while we're bigging up Arne Slot, he's getting his backside handed to him by Peter Bosz?
Yeah, but that again, I think the Champions League just derailed a little bit the momentum, all of that. I think Liverpool fans should be excited. Okay, this is not Klopp.
PSV were in Europe too, by the way.
Yeah. And did better than Feyenoord.
Yeah. Maybe they got you don't think that they got the wrong bald Dutch guy, yeah?
No. Right. No, I would take Slot every day. But as we said, there's similarities between Slot and Klopp, although Klopp was bigger and obviously in a bigger league and had reached a Champions League final before.
And had won the Bundesliga
twice as well. So they're not at the same level now that Slot is coming to Liverpool to where Klopp was when he arrived. But then Liverpool is better now for Slot than it was when Klopp arrived and took over Rodgers with the squad that he had at the time. The squad is pretty good now. Okay, there's question mark over Salah. What are you doing with Salah? What are you doing with Van Dijk? There's a few things that they would have to sort out. But it's still in a better state than what Klopp inherited when he arrived. So I think overall you should be excited. What I liked in a way, I think Amorim would have been a good pick. But Amorim plays a completely different formation certainly than what Liverpool have been used to on the club in the 4-3-3. I'm not saying that those Liverpool players could not have done the Amorim formation, but for example, there's not really space for Luis Diaz and a Mo Salah in the Amorim formation because your two wide players actually play as inside 10s behind the striker. Yeah. Slot plays exactly like Klopp, the same formation, use the people the same way. So for that, the continuity, I think that is very interesting, more than if Amorim had arrived at Liverpool.
We should point out that this is not a done deal.
No, not yet.
And I was on the FC show the other night. We sort of talked about, if you're Slot, what questions would you be asking of Liverpool and Liverpool asking of Slot when you go meet them? And it's obviously not just how much you're going to pay me and for how long.
Oh, yeah.
I think obviously wanting to know Slot's opinion of Van Dijk and Salah,
yeah,
and what they should do, and saying like, we have a budget here, right? How much more can you get out of them? Do you know Van Dijk? Just not all Dutch people; they don't all know each other, right? I think those are really big calls to make. What positions do you think we should, to play your football? What positions do you think? And bearing in mind that all of this will then go through Michael Edwards, who, I'm not saying is infallible, but he's the guy who's going to call the shots, right?
Yeah, and Richard Hughes as well.
And Richard Hughes, name check Richard. But there has to be a dialogue, and I think a lot will depend on the vibe that they picked up from that dialogue. And my understanding of Slot, again, I don't know him, but I know people who do know him, is that he's not a pushover. He's not somebody who will go and tell them whatever they want to hear so he can get the job and then afterwards do what he wants.
No.
Right? He's going to say, no, this is what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. What can you give me? Okay, fine. And I'll go and decide.
Yeah.
And by the same token, I don't think Liverpool said, oh, here's a contract, please sign here. I think Liverpool genuinely they want confirmation that he's the right guy. So they want to have this dialogue with him because they do not want to make a mistake here. It's only April. It's nice to have your manager lined up in April.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary. Not when you're going to rebuild the team. If Michael Edwards needs more time to find Klopp's successor because you're not 100% on Amorim or Slot or whoever else, you can take more time. And this is an important point, I think, to get across.
Yeah, I think it's an interview process like for any job. So Slot will go in and he will say, this is my presentation to you. This is what I want. This is how I want to play with your players. This is what we're going to do. This, like for every job, this is what happens, even lower leagues, even in other countries. Liverpool are just not going to say, Arne Slot, we like what you do at Feyenoord. Hey, shake hands, 5-year deal. He will have to show them that this is my idea, this is what I want to do. Some have a really good preparation and really great PowerPoint. Some have 2 pages. Some don't bother that much and still hope to get the job. Some
and often do. Because they're quick on their feet and they can answer questions and they've thought about it.
But this is Liverpool can't get this one wrong. This is typically at this time in the Premier League where at some point, eventually Chelsea are going to get better. United are going to get better. City still have Guardiola for at least a year, maybe more, we don't know. Arteta and Arsenal are on the up. Postecoglou and Spurs are on the up. Villa and Emery are on the up. Liverpool can't get this one wrong. You can't get someone that you will sack in March. This is not, because then you're going to fall down pretty quickly, I think, in this kind of very competitive Premier League for next season. So you make sure that he does a good presentation, that you're happy with what he has, the ideas, the project, what to do with Salah, what to do with Van Dijk, what to do with, I don't know, Konate, whatever.
I appreciate what you're saying about Liverpool can't get it wrong, and obviously you don't want to get it wrong, and if you sack him in March, it's a disaster, whoever the new manager is. I'm not as bullish as you are in terms of the gap between the sort of top three and everybody else. Like I don't. Yes, United will get better, but can United get back into the top four straight away, or even compete for the top four and compete with Liverpool's level from next season? I'm not 100%. I'm not convinced of that. I think it's going to take more time whether they keep Ten Hag or let him go. Chelsea. I mean, despite him and his analytics, it really is a tire fire right now, despite all these young players.
Yeah.
I think it's still going to take more time. Villa have spent a lot of money. I don't know how PSR is going to come into that. I don't take it as read that Villa will automatically be better next season. Much as we love Ange, I don't know which way that's going. Do you? Nobody does, right? Son is a year older.
So the negative.
There's still, I think, a sizable gap there. So I think you probably have a little more. I mean, you can deal with a transition season, I think, if you're Liverpool.
Yeah,
it's not like you fall off a cliff. Going back to the game, we have to just give credit to Everton.
Yeah.
Because, look, it's not the way I would want my team to play. But in this situation, they made a commitment playing with Sean Dyche. And I actually think, given the result at the weekend, obviously you always want to win the Liverpool derby, but this wasn't a do or die situation for Everton. I mean, I think I'll go so far as to say Liverpool needed this more than Everton did. To prepare your team in that way, to get them to perform in that way, I think you got to give some credit to the S&M man.
On the back of a win against Forest, that was massive for them in the table as well. But they also knew that a win on Wednesday night, and they were sure to stay up. And also to deny...
Unless they get more points off.
Yeah, true. But it doesn't look like that. And also to deny Liverpool, your arch rivals, a go at the title. So, I mean, if you're not motivated then, you will never be motivated. You haven't won in 14 years at home in the derby, in the league.
But they were motivated in the previous 14 years as well. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
in some ways, the win at the weekend...
If you're mid-table, I know you always want to win the derby, but if you're mid-table, whether you win or lose, it doesn't change anything. Whereas this time, a win for them and a defeat for Liverpool had huge impact on this season.
Yeah, I see it a bit differently. I think it would have been different if they had drawn the Forest game or if they had lost it.
Yeah, no, of course.
I think there would have been more pressure on them. But yeah, it's interesting to me though how there's still space in the Premier League for people who play the way Sean Dyche plays.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the variety that's out there, and it's part of the reason that football's interesting, right? Everybody's like, oh yeah, no, we're going to play out from the back, and they're going to talk about philosophy and stuff like that. This guy does things differently, and it works to him. And look, I believe this only takes.
It worked last night.
It worked last night. No, but if it keeps him up with the chaos behind them,
true. But he hasn't worked for most of the season too. Otherwise, it would not be in that position.
It worked for him for many years of Burnley as well.
Burnley,
right? I find this to be a fascinating sport for that reason. There is more than one way to get to the goal.
Yeah.
And you're never going to win the league playing that way. I mean, honestly, if you gave him Manchester City, and I don't know if Sean Dyche would have them playing the way Everton play, but if they did, I don't think City would win the league. To be honest, with Sean Dyche, if he chooses to play the way Everton do or the way Burnley did, but in this context, it completely works. So well done him.
Yeah. Nice tracksuit, by the way, as well. He's unbeaten with the tracksuit on the touchline, so I'm very impressed.
And the voice, come on, man.
Yeah,
come on.
Don't
you want to call him daddy? Come on.
No, but the voice has always been there. The tracksuit, no. So really impressive.
From Klopp's perspective, what's going through his mind right now?
I mean, again, they showed him after the Calvert-Lewin goal. And remember, we talked a lot about that goal they conceded against United when he was like, wow. And he looked shocked again that they conceded a goal like that.
He has this thing now where I guess since he's had his teeth done, like where his mouth is half open, it looks kind of like a grin, but inside, there's a total meltdown.
But can you imagine how many? I suspect preparing for this game, he said, "Listen, Everton are the second best team on set pieces in the league, behind Arsenal. Yet they haven't scored for a while on set pieces, but they are a threat all the time." And then what? So having warned your players, I guess having worked on that with your players prior to the game, maybe just a little, but still, having known that you struggle at times like that, to then see the first goal is a third or fourth phase of a set piece, so I'm not sure we can give that to a set piece. But the second one, direct, obviously the corner and the header. it's not even, you can consider goal on the set piece where you and I jump, you jump higher than me, you head the ball well, your timing is great, I tried my best to defend. Yeah. But Calvert-Lewin is a free header, Gab, on a corner. When you're Liverpool and you play for the title, this is just not acceptable. And Trent, Van Dijk, whoever is it, I don't really care, to be fair. Because they should not happen.
I feel for, when he rested all those players, 5 starters against Fulham, I thought, you know what? He's showing belief in his squad. He's doing the right thing. He wants to make sure that they're fresh for Everton. He's saying that I don't just have faith in my first 11. You guys coming in, Gravenberch, Jota, whatever else. And I think these guys really let him down. They let him down with their finishing. And, it's not like they let him down because they're bad people they didn't prefer. But I'm just imagining what's going through Klopp's mind and the second guessing that must be in there. When he said that, he made the analogy with when he explained why he was leaving, and he made the analogy with the car that's going on empty, but don't worry, I still have enough to finish on a high. Does this lead him to doubt himself? Does this lead him to question, should I have made this announcement earlier? What could I have done different?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
And I say this, I'm a fan of Klopp. I say this, it's just, I don't, it bothers me to see this fizzle out. I hope it doesn't fizzle out. Look, I want the best team, the most deserving team to win the Premier League. And if you hold the gun to my head right now, it's probably Man City or Arsenal, or obviously ahead of Liverpool. But I just think I would just hate the idea of the Klopp era ending with a string of defeats.
Yeah. It'd be sad. It
really would be sad. And I think some of those players who've gone on such a long journey with him, especially, I really expect them and I really want them to step up between now and the end of the season.